Hi, and welcome to the fourth of these weekly devotionals on the BUTs, the butts of the Bible. We're going to turn to 1 Kings chapter 5 and verses 3 to 5 for this week's reflection. These are the words of King Solomon. You know that because of the wars waged against my father David from all sides, he could not build a temple for the name of the Lord his God, until the Lord put his enemies under his feet. And here it comes. But now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side, and there is no adversary or disaster. I intend therefore to build a temple for the name of the Lord my God. But now the Lord my God has given me rest. Solomon has succeeded his father David as king over Israel. He's also taken on the mantle of temple builder. David's dream had been to build a temple in Jerusalem where God would dwell and his people would worship him. But that dream wasn't fulfilled by David, but by his successor and son Solomon. In this time of crisis, we've become used to worshipping remotely. It's a reminder to us that we can worship God wherever we are, that we don't have to come to a special building to meet with God. Now, yes, we miss gathering together on a Sunday or during the week, but we're still able to worship God wherever we were, and we're finding new ways to reimagine how to do church in these challenging times. In Jesus, we recognize that God doesn't dwell in a temple, in a building built by human hands, as Acts 17 and verse 24 reminds us. But he dwells in the hearts and the lives of believers, as 1 Corinthians 6 and verse 19 shows us. There are three things that I want to pick out from this passage in 1 Kings chapter 5 for us this week. Firstly, the question of his God versus my God. For us, many of us have been really appreciative and in awe of the work of the NHS and those on the frontline services of care during this time. We've seen and heard of the personal sacrifice and investment that those working in that arena. We think of what they are willing to give up to care for others. And sadly, for some, that's been giving up even their lives. We need to be those who are supporting in whatever way we can, and to be faithful and committed in prayer. As a church family at SBC, this week we're gathering on Thursday night remotely to pray specifically for the NHS. Hope you join us in doing that before we join the rest of the nation in applauding those working on the front line. Solomon didn't just merely want to pick up his father David's dream and legacy. He didn't just want to be the architect of another building. Solomon tells us in this passage that he's going to put his all into this building of the temple because it's become personal for him. He's building it for my God, his God. Not just David's God, but his God. I wonder what we're willing to give our all for in this week ahead. Second thing that I want us to reflect upon is this question of what the temple was being built for. We're told it was being built for the name of the Lord, not in the name of the Lord. Here in Salisbury, we've lots of old buildings, and many of them are named after significant people from the city's history. They're memorial buildings. They're buildings in the name of somebody who's already died. Here the temple was for the Lord, not in the name of the Lord. It was a place where the living God would come to dwell. Jesus picks up in this thought in John chapter 2 and verses 12 to 22. He refers to himself as the temple of God. He says that this temple will be destroyed, but in 3 days will be built again, raised up again, echoing that first Easter account. The listeners to Jesus were astonished by what he said, because they knew that it had taken nearly 50 years to build this version of the temple. But they're only seeing it in the light of a memorial building. Whereas the risen Jesus wants us to think about himself and being part of a movement, something that's living in and through him. About you, but I'd much rather be part of a living movement than just merely investing in a memorial to the past. But the third thing that I want us to think about is that time of turmoil that becomes a time of rest. COVID-19 and in the battle that has gone on against it has reflected for us those sort of warfare type terms. Battle, lives at stake. There's a saying going around Salisbury, isn't there, that we've survived Novichok, so we'll survive COVID-19. But sadly, we recognise that we're losing some in the fight. In Jesus, he assures us that there is a time of rest that is coming. There will be a time when COVID-19 will be defeated. But what we know now and what we are assured of is that eternally, death and sin and sickness has been defeated in Jesus. Wendy sent me a cartoon recently of the devil saying to Jesus, with COVID-19, I've shut all of your churches. But Jesus replies, yes, but I've won because I've opened a church in every home. And that's true, isn't it? Many more people are joining us in worship. They're going to church, even though it's remotely. They're listening in and hearing us. They're watching and being thankful for what churches are doing in their communities in this time of challenge. Because it's personal for us when we are part of a movement and not a memorial. We can be reminded and encouraged and assured that victory is already won in and through Jesus. And there is nothing, not even COVID-19, that will defeat him and his church. As Matthew 16 and verse 18 tells us, Jesus spoke these words, I have built my church, and not even the gates of hell will prevail against it. We know in Jesus that our rest is assured, that a time is coming where there will be no adversary and no disaster. We'll know rest in this time, but we'll know more and more fully a rest and an assurance in eternity because of Jesus. In those things, may you be blessed this week. Amen.